Hello, on this very rainy bank holiday Monday. It's miserable, isn't it? I was going to garden today. I've ended up
Mm.
working. Let me say hello and welcome to Kate Collins. Hello, Kate.
Hi, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for giving up your time on your bank holiday to talk to us. So, for you, the focus of our interview today is going to be sort of two things, really. The usual, your route out of teaching, but also, really interestingly, that what you're doing now, the thing that you have transitioned to, actually is a service that can really help serving teachers. So we'll explore that as well. So I think that will be very interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go back in the mists of time. It's not that long for you because you're still young. But why did you originally become a teacher? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's funny. Like when I was a teenager, I remember people saying, "Oh, I think you'd make a really good teacher." But unfortunately, it was usually in the context of people calling me bossy. Um, so I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to do that. I'm not sure that's where that's come from." And then when I got a bit older, I was a teaching assistant, and between witnessing some of the teaching while I was a teaching assistant, and also I had some amazing teachers. I had an English teacher specifically who, I mean, that class would go off on all sorts of tangents. I'm sure she got in loads of trouble for not getting through the syllabus fast enough. But I just vividly remember how she would make me feel and the things that we would learn. And I think the reason I wanted to get into teaching was I just loved that idea that somebody has the ability or the power to change the way a person feels about themselves and change the way they feel about the world. I loved that. I thought there was something really important in it. And I think that's what initially led me to teaching.
Yeah, that's really nice. Um, so, what did English end up being your specialism then, or
No, no, not at all. No, I'd gone to university to do psychology, and I got a psychology degree. And then I became a psychology teacher, and that was really when that kind of passion about being able to change the way somebody feels about themselves in the world, like psychology is the way to do that. I loved being a psychology teacher because you're presenting ideas to kids at a period in their life. I was teaching either A level or
Hmm.
international baccalaureate, and you're introducing ideas to kids that they have never thought of before. And they deeply reflect on what it means for them as individuals, but what it means for society as well. And I would it the one of the reasons I absolutely loved being a psychology teacher, and teachers know you teach the same thing every year and it can get a bit sort of dry and a bit dull. But what I absolutely loved and what kept it really fresh for me was that I could teach the same study, but I would still see like light bulbs come on in kids' heads, and I would see the way that they suddenly changed the way they viewed the world. And so I absolutely loved teaching psychology. It refueled my love for the subject. I vividly remember when I left university being a bit like, oh, I'm kind of done with psychology. Like I'm a bit psychologied out. I'm
Yeah.
not as interested anymore. And the minute I started teaching it to like 16-year-olds, I was suddenly back in love with it again, and I really enjoyed doing that. So yeah, I was a psychology teacher.
Mm. Do you know, you just made me think of something. When people say to me, "Is there anything that you miss about teaching?" I always say, "No, not one single solitary thing." But actually, do you know what? I miss the light bulbs.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do. I miss standing there and seeing those light bulbs come on around the room.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Thank
I
you
wouldn't
for
say,
reminding me of that.
yeah, I think that's why, I largely my job still is about light bulbs coming on. It's just not in front of teenagers anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long did you teach for?
I was a teacher for 10 years, and half of that was in the UK and half of that was abroad in Singapore. So I did teach in an international setting, which taught me massive amounts about education, about the world, and about myself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how much you learn about yourself when you are in that situation, isn't it? So, I mean, obviously, I can really feel how enthusiastic you were for the job. So, what happened to make you not want to
It's a
do it
great
anymore?
Yeah, it's a great question. And and you would think that I might really regret leaving, but I don't. I'm similar. Um, I think I was reflecting on this earlier, and I think actually the point that I started to come away from it is much earlier than I initially thought. So before I actually made any steps towards leaving teaching, I remember I'd been teaching for maybe 4 or 5 years. And in the summer, I'm a single person. I didn't have anybody to go on holiday with, so I decided to go on one of these trips where you go and join like a coach full of people. And so I went to America, and I went on this trip, and I was there for like, I think the trip was like 2.5 weeks or something.
Mm.
And I went, and it was just a coach load of young people, none of which knew me as a teacher. And I went, and I was suddenly allowed to be me again.
Mm.
Like no one was looking to me to be the responsible one, or the one with, who's always got to be sensible and have thought through all the consequences of all the things we've got to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, because even when you're a teacher, it becomes part of your identity, and the people around you treat you as a teacher. And so,
Yeah, even when you're with other adults, you're the
yes,
adult in the room.
yes,
It just
yeah,
conveys an extra aura of authority or wisdom, or I don't know,
yes, yeah.
groundedness. Oh, if
It's a
only they knew.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, isn't it? And you end up being treated like that. And so because you're being treated like that, you behave like that. There's this very controlled, suppressed feeling I had where you were just always the one who had to have an answer and had to be in charge of things. And I went on this holiday where nobody was treating me like that. And I was suddenly like, I could be quite fun.
Oh,
Being fun. This is interesting. And it just took me back to that sort of time where I was like, oh, I remember this person. Like, she's so much nicer to be around. she's so much lighter and brighter and enthusiastic. And I noticed it one day, and I thought, oh God, that's really interesting. And then I went back into teaching, and the holiday had refreshed me, and I went back in feeling a bit more buoyant, shall we say. And then a few more years in, I I just, typical story. I was starting to not look after myself again. I would always live in this boom and bust period where I would start the term where I was definitely going to go to the gym. I was definitely going to eat right. And I was definitely going to do my planning like 3 weeks in advance. And, all of those promises you make yourself.
you're
That
definitely going to brush your teeth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're definitely going to make sure that you lose some weight, brush your hair, and get up earlier. And as the term goes on, they just all get knocked off to the point where you come home, eat a pizza, and fall asleep.
Yeah.
Like
I was
you
just
know,
going to say every night's pizza night. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I was just realizing that it's really not a healthy way for me to live. And I guess the other thing, I think one of the things that really led me to, so I would say the thing for me was coaching. I was so fortunate that I was at an international school, and international schools are embracing coaching for education. And I managed to get coaching at school for free. And it literally was life-changing. And I went for a promotion at the school I was at, and I didn't get it. And I was in the deputy head's office afterwards asking, like, was there any useful feedback? To which the answer was no. And she said to me, she goes, oh, but if you are looking to move up in the future, here you go. Why don't you do this project I need doing for no extra money, no time? It wasn't anywhere in my special interests or skills. It was literally her saying, if you do this, then we might see you as worthy of being promoted and whatever. Which the implicit thing I took from that is, so what you are telling me is that I am damaging my health and my stress levels and working so hard to not be worthy. You're telling me that all of this effort and energy I'm putting in right now is still not making me worthy. And I thought, this feels like a game I'm not going to win.
Mm.
Um, and so I went and I sat in coaching. And I don't know if have you ever had coaching, Melanie? Or yeah, the the luxury of having an hour of your week where you can sit and unpack all of the things that have happened to you and how you feel about them and what you really think, and having this kind of person who is totally disconnected from your life, so they have no skin in the game, they've got no obligations or anything around that, and you're allowed to just unpack all of that, and they will ask you questions that point you in the direction of, well, what are your main values? What is it you want to get out of life? And I realized through a process of coaching that the reasons, my core values and beliefs about why I went into teaching, where teaching itself and the systems I was in were taking me further away from that. They were no longer fulfilling why I was there. And that was when, through that process, where I realized that was true. But also I then realized that I've got the skills, the ability and the resilience to be able to leave. And that was what got me there. I'm not sure I would have got there without it.
Without the questions being asked and you having to think that deeply about it. Yeah. That's quite different to anything that anybody else has said so far. That's really interesting. So they provided you with the environment to ask yourself the question, to find the answer, and the answer to the answer, as in what to go into. They gave you the skills and the training that you could then build on to set up your own business.
Yeah, so setting up my own business was really interesting, and I have to say, actually, you know, I do recognize I'm incredibly fortunate. You know, I was teaching internationally, which means I was being paid more than I ever would have been paid as a teacher in the UK. And I am a single person. I don't have any dependents. So I do recognize that I was in a really fortunate position where I could say, do you know what? If I quit my job tomorrow, I can live for a little bit. I can afford to work this out. And it was one of my closest friends. He runs his own business and has run his own business for years. And it was him who said, you can do this. He was like, you've definitely got all the skills and abilities you need to start your own business. So yeah, so I did. I started training as a coach. And completed my initial training for that. So I started that in Singapore and I completed it in the UK. And then I went on to do my certification program. So I'm now an internationally certified coach registered with the ICF. And I love it. And I did start by coaching other teachers in schools. And so yeah, that was initially what I started my business doing.
So coaching, what focus? Because there are quite a few sort of different.
Yeah, so I
life
think
coaches, business coaches, money coaches.
yeah, so I think the niche I've kind of settled into is mindset coaching. So shifting perspectives, you know, the belief that everybody is capable. Everybody has the ability to change their lives. They have the ability to make things better for themselves. All they need is a help with a push in the right direction in terms of changing their perspective, changing their mindset around the things they tell themselves to be true or the assumptions they make about the world.
Yeah. So how long did the training take you?
The training actually took me a really long time because it was expensive. You can do it a lot faster than I did. But actually, I'm quite pleased I took my time over it because it meant that I was getting practice in between my modules. But yeah, I think I started it initially in person. The pandemic also didn't help. So I started in person in Singapore in 2019, and I didn't complete that until 2021, I think. And then I did 6 months of certification in 2021. So yeah, it did take me quite a long time. You can get coaching accreditations that are fewer hours than that, but I really enjoyed the thoroughness of what I did. And I learned a lot along the way.
How did you go about choosing the training provider for that?
So if I'm honest, I just went with the one that my school were funding initially. So they were utilizing a company called CTI, or Coactive Coaching, and everybody there raved about it, and I thought, well, hang on, if a bunch of teachers are raving about a piece of training, I'm gonna I'm gonna give that a go. And I wasn't disappointed, you know, coming from a teacher. The way they organize and the way they deeply embed the skills in you, yeah, I was really impressed with it. But there are lots of different companies that do that sort of thing.
Right, okay. And so you said it's quite expensive. Do you mind sharing with us the figures?
It's thousands of pounds, but if I'm honest, I don't know that I know, because I paid half in Singapore dollars and half in pounds. So so I'm actually a bit confused about how much it was, but it was thousands of pounds. It
Yeah.
was it is not cheap.
Mm,
And I think that was a testament to my commitment to it. Well, my commitment to it, but also how much I enjoyed it. Because the other thing with coaching is how much you learn about yourself along the way, and how
mm,
much it was improving my relationships with others and my relationship with myself. It's quite addictive.
mm. Yeah, I did some proofreading for somebody who's doing a coaching master's,
Mm,
and I was quite struck in her dissertation by how much self-reflection she had to do as
mm,
part of. So when she'd had a coaching session and then she went to supervision, she had to talk about how she reacted to what her coachee was telling her and how it impacted her and her own sort of emotional reaction to it, and how she could use that to help, or in some cases hinder, what she was doing with the coachee. It's very interesting.
mm. Oh,
Mm,
that side of things is fascinating. And do you know what? I have to be honest, the coaching mindset and coaching Kate is sometimes in polar opposition with teacher Kate. So as the teacher, you're positioned as the authority. You're the one who's supposed to have the answers. You're the one who's supposed to be telling people what to do, or strongly facilitating them into what you need them to do. And in coaching, you have to abandon all of that, because you have to trust that the coachee in front of you knows what's right for them.
mm,
They're adults who are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. And you have to remember that your reactions are need to be guarded, because it's not about you. It's about how you can best serve them, and allow them to access things in themselves. Because if they get there themselves, they're much more likely to take action and do it
mm,
them.
yeah.
So I did, when I first started training, I found it very difficult. I was always getting told off for maybe interjecting too much of my own like suggestion or whatever. And that's not what coaching is about. And I've learned a massive amount. And I feel like it's made me a better person
Oh,
rather than
okay.
constantly telling people what to do.
Yeah. Um, so while you were doing the training, was that your, so you said, well, you started it in Singapore, so you were still teaching at that point.
I was, yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you came back here and then carried on with the coaching, were you just focusing on that, or were you doing any supply teaching or anything to?
No. So I just started the coaching, but I also initially had planned to start a business. So when I was in Singapore, I was teaching some of the most amazing students in the world. But I quickly realized that they were largely going to get an IB psychology grade, whether I was there or not. Like they are, they're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And so what I realized I could do for them was I started interjecting lessons that were on how to be a good human. And it was parts of the psychology syllabus, and sometimes not part of the syllabus. It was just stuff I thought was really interesting. I would teach them some psychology that would help them along the way. So I taught them about their emotions and what they were, where they come from, how you can utilize them as tools to help you with revision, to help you with, you know, your life. So I created How to Be a Good Human, and I initially wanted to launch that program in a way that was really, that I could pitch to schools, that was really easy for teachers to use, because we all know PSHE style lessons, they're at the bottom of the pile. They get done poorly, even by me. Like, I will hold my hands up and say that there are some weeks where you're just like, oh, I haven't even had a chance to look at this. I'm so, you know, I've been so caught up in what I'm supposed to be doing for exam classes, I haven't done it. And what became clear to me was that particularly post-pandemic, we're asking more and more of teachers. We're asking them to know about well-being things and mindfulness and, you know, all of this stuff. And what worried me was I was only just keeping up with lots of it because of my psychology background. But also, if you do some of those things badly, they can actually have a detrimental effect on the students listening to them. You really want them to have a positive one, but because they're being taught in a way that's not very thoughtful often, and that is no criticism to the teachers delivering it at all, it's just by virtue of the structure of your timetable and your capacity.
Yeah.
They needed to be better. So I really wanted to try and see if I could do this, because I knew that if you want kids to know how to look after themselves online, you want them to learn about racism and sexism and homophobia, and you want them to care about climate change, and you want them to do all of those big things, you can't really do any of that until you understand about yourself, your emotions and how they work and how they help and hinder you, how your brain works, so quite how your perception of reality is not the same as everybody else's, and how you communicate with others in meaningful ways. And I was convinced that if I could use my program that taught about those things, that was like the key to how you get kids to then engage with those other big topics. So I created How to Be a Good Human. I did a good 6 to 8 months trial. I trialed it in a couple of schools. Everybody loved it, but of course nobody wants to pay any money for it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, at the moment, that is on hold. And I'm currently looking into ways in which I can get that. I can find some funding for that. But what I quickly realized when I was talking to teachers about that was that there is no point trying to tell young people about those things when the teachers in the room don't know them yet. The Welsh curriculum have just changed their new national curriculum. They've got this wonderful health and well-being section, and in one of the bits they've got a whole thing about emotion regulation. And one of the statements is, I think this is for a 12-year-old, I can recognize and regulate my own emotions. And I don't know about you, but I can barely do that, and most adults I know can't do it. And the other thing that happened was when I tried to teach about emotions in a classroom of Singaporean kids, right? So these are some of the best behaved kids in the world. They misbehaved because asking anybody about their emotions, they get
Quickly.
Yes, uncomfortable. And I thought, if I'm experiencing that behavior management issue in this classroom, I can only imagine what is going to happen in UK classrooms when teachers get up in front of classes and start trying to ask them about their emotions. So I created the EduKate Teachers Network. And my intention is to help you to help them. So come and learn from me about some of these things and some of the potential pitfalls in behavior management that are going to arise when you talk about them, so that you're better equipped to then be able to deliver some of these topics to teachers. So that's kind of how the business did a big sort of windy road. But yeah, essentially at the moment I'm coaching and I'm trying to help teachers before they can help students.
Right. Okay. So,
So I've given you a lot to think about that.
yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you know, I sent you in advance a rough idea of what we were going to talk about, and one of the discussion points is any barriers you encountered and any pitfalls and different wrong turnings along the way. So obviously, you've really evolved what you thought you would be doing, and each step of the journey, however well it's worked, just sort of informed the next one, rather like, oh no, it's all going wrong, forget it, I'm not doing. You've thought, okay,
I've had days like
I'm
that.
keeping that. We'll park that, not throwing it away, parking it, maybe come back to that. But it's shown you the next step and actually what. So how do you deliver this program for teachers to give them the skills about the whole emotional well-being
Yeah,
business?
so at the moment it is just a series of live webinars. So I've got a new series coming up in June and July. I've picked June and July because hopefully, particularly secondary teachers, that's when, you know, you get a bit of a lighter load when kids have gone. So at the moment I'm doing some one-off webinars with the hope that then if people are interested in some of these topics I've picked, then they can ask for more in-depth workshops on them. So I would love to be able to deliver some in-person stuff. Obviously that is more difficult, but at the moment I'm looking at webinars, and I'm trying to build EduKate Teachers Network so that people can come and listen and get an idea, because often we don't know what we don't know.
Mm,
That's why I'm starting with some really simple stuff. So I'm starting with emotions in your classroom and talking about what that means. I'm looking at focus. I'm looking at product work and productivity myths. I love that one. So there's loads of stuff in there that teachers, you know, ideas that teachers or assumptions teachers make about what they have to do, how they have to behave, and unpicking those and looking at it, because they get sometimes in schools there's often, oh well, they're doing that, so God, I'm gonna have to do it, otherwise I'm gonna look like the lazy teacher or the whatever. And I unpack some of those things as well. So some of them are topics that are more geared towards you, the teacher, and how it can help you specifically, and some of them are helping yourself, so that then when you are asked to deliver some PSHE or those sorts of style things, you are then better equipped to be able to do that. So it's, you know, learning about yourself to help others as well, and also to try and, you know, if you're a teacher who comes and listens to one of my, you know, work and productivity things, and you then go into your department and say, do you know what, we're going to look at our emails and I want us to change this about this, I can, you know, I've got specific advice for things like that, where then you can go back and you can try and make a change, even if it's just in your tiny universe, you know.
yeah.
It might not be that you can make huge sweeping changes across school culture, but it might be that you can influence something within your department or just within your day that makes things, that relieves a little bit of that cognitive load. So yeah, I'm doing a series of webinars in the summer, and then hopefully I'll start some more in September. And I'm also looking I'm also coaching some teachers as well. I've got some teachers who really want change, but are need that time and space to work out exactly what that is and how they can influence change in their school. And coaching is a really great way for people to do that if they want to get really into, where am, like, if I'm lost, where am I and how do I find the right path out. So yeah, individual one-to-one coaching and then online webinars.
Right, I'm going to have to keep track in my head of all the questions that have just been thrown up by what you've just said.
Okay.
Okay, so the webinars, you said they're
Yes.
live.
Yes.
So how long are they? How frequent are they? And how do people book into them, onto them?
Okay. Yep. So they are an hour and a half. Let me just check that I'm not about to lie to you. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, excuse me. So I want to get the dates right. So let me check this. Yeah, so they are an hour and a half, and they are currently being held one a week. So you don't need to come to all of them. But yeah, so at the moment they are from 4:30 till 5:30. The first one's on the 8th of June. And then there's one every week. And there are 6 of them. Takes you right up till the end of term. And you can book onto them. So I'm going to give you the link.
The links, yes, and they'll be in the show notes for
Yeah,
all of
in the show
them.
notes,
Yeah.
you can go to the landing page. But yeah, they are at the moment that series is literally just like a tiny introduction to certain things. So you don't need to come to all of them, but you can just sign up to the ones that interest you or you think are interested in your work life.
And how much do they cost?
So those are it's £15 for each one. Essentially, I just need people to you know, guarantee that they're gonna come show
Yeah,
up. Yeah. They're
yeah,
only
because
50.
people sign up for things and then don't bother showing if they, yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. Okay, and the coaching, right? So in terms of school hierarchy, who is the coaching aimed at?
If I'm being really honest, in terms of my my aspirations for the world of education, I believe all head teachers should be being coached.
Mm.
I don't think in the world as it has been over the last few years, I don't think you are being a responsible leader if you yourself are not pausing to think about how your actions are aligning with your values, the culture of your school, and what you want for the future of your school. And if you, as somebody in senior leadership, can take that time out to reflect and think, hang on, something's not going right here. My staff are grumbling. As we know, we've got teachers leaving in droves. And for some people, that is definitely the right answer. For some people, myself included, I'm now taking care of myself much, much better than I was.
Mm.
But I still really care about education. And so I genuinely think that senior leaders need to be being coached. But coaching itself works for any education staff. And I would encourage anybody who feels like they want to get reconnected with why they started teaching. They want to improve things. They keep going through performance management and having to write down some targets that they just don't feel very connected to because somebody's making them write a thing. If you're in that position, then coaching can really help you. And importantly, if like me, you are at a point where you're thinking, I don't know if this is what I want to do anymore, but I can't be sure, or I don't know what would lie outside of it for me. That is an ideal coaching topic.
Mm.
Um, and so ideal that I'm also at the moment coaching junior doctors, and that the parallels between teachers and junior doctors have been really remarkable,
Yeah.
because people internalize all the things that are going wrong. When you are a teacher, you are a doctor. It's part of your identity. People think, oh God, well, if I'm not coping, it must be because there's something wrong with me specifically. And that couldn't be further from the truth. We are operating in systems that are broken. And coaching can really help you step outside of your tiny little bubble and shift your perspective on that. And sometimes then make it feel manageable to you. When you realize that it's not your personal failing, it can make it manageable and mean that you can stay in
Yeah.
teaching, rather than just thinking, oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed, that's it, I need to quit. Coaching can really help unlock what's actually going on.
Mm. Yeah, because I was talking about this recently with another interviewee who's going to be aired a few months after you. Um, and yeah, and we discussed that sometimes people just need a bit of distance and a bit of space to get fixed, if you like, to get mended, and then go back into teaching. Just because you are overwhelmed or go through a burnout doesn't mean that you have to leave. I'm not
Mm.
advocating that everybody needs to get out of teaching. I just want people to realize that if that is the path that they want to pursue, there are plenty of ways of doing it successfully.
Mm.
But I mean, we need committed teachers, we need people to stay in teaching. And if people like you can help them to do that, brilliant. Because
Mm.
otherwise, we're only going to have people left in teaching ultimately who don't really want to be there, but don't know how to get out, or do
Yeah.
want to be there, but actually aren't the best people to be there.
And there's nothing worse. I'm sure you must have heard this so often, that thing of, oh, well, I don't really want to be here anymore, but what else would
What
I
can
do?
I do? Oh, so yeah, I've said
And
it.
yeah, and it really, I think the other thing is teachers are so, we don't realize, because we're always surrounded by each other, we don't realize how deeply skilled we are.
Mhm.
And all industries need teachers. They need people with that ability to take complex information, decode it, and then give it to others in a way that is manageable and creates long lasting behavior change in them. And that is such an amazing skill. And I didn't even realize when I came out, and last year, I a woman who said to me, oh my goodness, I need some help with this workshop. She was like, I've realized I absolutely hate standing up in front of people. Can I pay you to come and do this? She was literally asking to pay me for the skills I had as a teacher. They were all my teaching skills. And I had come to believe by the time I left, I felt like those were worthless, like I didn't have any skills. And that could not be further from the truth. If you are a trained teacher, you have an abundance of skills. You've just become blind to them because everybody else around you also has them. But if you look outside of teaching, you know, there is always a need for those skills, and all industries need those skills. So what else would I do? You know, no, stop saying that. Go and look.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think lockdown did people very much good in that sense, because I mean, I'm not saying parents didn't do a great job coping with their kids at home and having to help them with the schoolwork, but you'd hear parents saying that they were teaching their kids at home. No, you weren't, unless you
Yeah.
were already a teacher and you were doing your timetable and teaching your kids at home because they weren't in school, those key workers kids they could have been. Yeah, no, parents were helping their children, they weren't teaching
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that didn't do us any favors. Suddenly everybody was a teacher because they had the kids at home.
Yeah, it's a valuable skill. We've never been, again, the system doesn't make you feel like it's valuable. And because you are surrounded by other people who have it, you're suddenly blind to it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm afraid we're going to have to stop it there because Zoom is telling me that we've got 1 minute left. And
Oh
because I'm a
no.
cheapskate and I've only got the free version, we're going to get kicked off.
Okay.
So, um, so will have all of your details in the show notes, so that
Absolutely.
people know where to find you for your webinars and for your coaching, should they feel so inclined. And hopefully also they'll take heart from your story of your route out of teaching. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you very much for having me.